Today is February 11th. Our show is about a month and a half away, and today I am starting on Joseph's coat. So right now I'm just taping all the pattern pieces together, all 60 pages of it. It'd be really great to have a cutting table, but I just kind of have to use the tables in the classroom. So the goal for today is to get the pattern pieces cut out from the paper and maybe start cutting them out of the fabric. In previous productions, we have made a mock-up out of muslin, but for this one, just time-wise and resource-wise, we are jumping right into making the coat with the real fabrics. So we have several tweed fabrics that we're going to use and various trims. This one especially is my favorite. So looking forward to starting the work. So we decided based on the look to use McCall's pattern M7939. So it has this full length coat with a bib in the front and it zips. So we are, this is just the sketch that I whipped up real quick and the costume designers settled on. So we're going to be using each panel piece from the pattern, we're going to cut in half so we can incorporate more colors. And then we're going to add godettes at each seam of the panels so that the coat can flare out a little bit more. And then I have a little bit of a multicolor pattern that got donated to us, so we're going to use that for the bib. Then we have some ribbon that has suns on it that we're going to use at the collar and the cuffs. And then some multicolored ribbon that we're going to sew over each seam. And then on the back, we wanted to try and demonstrate some of Joseph's dreams. So we're going to put a star that kind of looks like a shooting star, some corn, and then some olive branches for forgiveness. And then we have the multicolor fabric again on the back. Today is February 13th, hence the Valentine's outfit. Yesterday I got a good bit of fabric cut for the coat. I did have to sidestep over to another sewing project. We're making circle skirts and harem pants for the wives and the brothers. And we cut them out of polyester charmeuse satin. And we learned in our previous production that it frays a lot. So we had to step over to that project to serge the edges so it would stop fraying. I did get, like I said, some of the fabric cut. I've also cut the fabric for the lining, and then I used some of the leftover satin from the skirts with the same panel pattern drawn to a triangle to be godettes for the coat. We're about to be on a long weekend for President's Day, and I want to be able to sew this weekend, and I don't have anywhere to cut at home because it's taking 4 of my classroom tables to cut. And my tables have previously had paint on them, previously had other like craft things on them. So I just went on and laid out some paper to make sure the fabric stays clean. The majority of the coat is twill. And then I have the rest of the pattern that I'm about to cut out. It is February 14th. So far this morning, I found out how to use the serger. I've already had to thread it like 7 times, but I figured out how to use the serger. I serged all of the satin that's going to be the godettes for the coat, and I'm currently serging this textile-y fabric because it had some pretty frayed edges as well. But I think other than that, nothing else is going to be serged for the coat. But once I get done with this serging, I'm going to iron everything and then get to sewing. It is February 15th. Yesterday, I was able to get all of the pieces ironed, and I started sewing just a little bit. I kind of didn't have a lot of time, but I started sewing the front panels of the coat with the first godette. Currently, the thing that I'm worried about is the lining of the coat and then how I'm going to reinforce the shoulder seams. So that's the things to troubleshoot. But I'm hoping to get the main body of the coat done today. All right, so this is 1/4 of the coat because it's the front panel on the front side. It's got the godettes already. It's gonna have to be hemmed because our actor's about my height and it's too long on me right now, but. All right, so it's about another hour later. I started sewing the back together. I think the pattern has an open like slit at the back, but I think I'm gonna put another godette there just because it zips in the front and I want it to really be full. But like I said, I ran out of godettes, but our winter musical was White Christmas. I just found this leftover green silk and there's no green on the coat right now. So I think I'm gonna see if there's enough of the green silk to cut the godettes out of. If not, I have some green velvet, but I just don't think it's gonna fit the vibe. So I'm gonna work on that, but I think I'm gonna take a little break first because I'm getting a little in need of a break. It is February 16th. I did no more sewing yesterday. I was able to cut new godettes out of the green satin. However, I could only get 2 of them. So the back godette remains undone for now, but the seam is finished otherwise. So I can just piece a new one in whenever I want to, just sew it to the side pieces. And I am thinking of kind of leaving that one open for now in case the coat doesn't fit. I can just cut it up the back panel and add a panel with kind of a godette-ish bottom. The issue with the green satin right now, I'm not going to even act like I know the correct word because I'm still kind of a beginner sewer, TBH. But I had to cut it. I should have cut it where it's parallel to the selvage. I had to cut it perpendicular to the selvage for it to fit. So I'm hoping that that doesn't cause any issues, but it is ironed and ready to go. So I'm about to, I don't want to get the serger back out. So I'm going to zigzag stitch the edges of this and then piece the rest of the coat together. It is 7:37 p.m. on February 16th. And here is the shell of the coat. I am not putting the zipper on yet to make sure that it'll fit my actor and that I don't need to add more panels. I still have to do the sleeves and all of the embellishments, but right now I'm kind of feeling like this is looking fire. So this is the bib done with its bias tape around it, and then this is the sleeve done before it was put on the coat. This is our Joseph wearing it for the first rehearsal before it had sleeves on. And then this is him once the sleeves were on and we were holding the bib in place with safety pins. And this is the back of the garment with sleeves on. Today is February 26th. I haven't updated in a few days, but I did get a few more things done on the coat. We added the sleeves and the zipper has been added as well. I just got done adding the collar. So we've got pretty much the structure of the coat done. Oh, I also added the lining. That reminded me I added the lining. So I have the cuff pieces ready to add on to the cuffs. And then I'm going to start working on all of the embellishments. The goal is to get it done before Tuesday. So it's Thursday right now, and I want the coat done by Tuesday. So let's see if we can make that happen. This is our Joseph wearing the coat once the cuff and collar was on. And once we had started sewing ribbon on to make sure it was laying correctly, at this point the coat still had lining, but we ended up taking the lining out because it made the bottom a little too tight. This was the jacket once all of the ribbon was done, but without the front panel or back panel. So this was just making sure that all of the ribbon was laying correctly. You will see that there's one red panel that was missing ribbon at this point. This is the finished back panel. There's corn and stars to represent the dreams. Joseph's dreams that he has, and then some extra ribbon for flair. This is once the front bib was put on. It is February 27th, and it is the last day of sewing on the coat. Finally, yesterday I was able to do the collar and cuffs and a little bit of the embellishments I worked on, but I kept breaking needles. I broke like 6 needles yesterday. One of them flew off and hit me in the eye, so that was where I stopped yesterday. But at the end of yesterday, every seam had the ribbon on it. Today I did the decorative back panel and added the bib in the front and a few buttons on the bib. So now the only thing left to do is hem it, which for some reason is making me feel really nervous, but I'm gonna hem it by the end of today so the coat can be done and we can move on to other costumes. And here is the finished coat. This is the back of the coat. And then here is the front of the coat, and I'm not even lying, the pictures do not do it justice. It is so vibrant and the gold shines in such a wonderful way. And these are our original sketches of the coat side by side with the front and the back of the coat. It is March 1st, so it is officially show month. I did finish the coat 2 days ago on February 27th. But I wanted to give a little bit of some information about why we designed the coat the way that we did, why it's made the way that it is. So I'm going to be reading off my notes a little bit because we did a lot of research. So we had some design inspiration, and we did some biblical research from across time periods. And then we also consulted with one of the local pastors whose church is hosting our production. So some of our inspirations were stained glass, mosaic, and kind of like quilting. We ended up kind of dropping the quilt idea because it would be so hot and heavy. But really, like stained glass, mosaic were some things that we tried to lean into. And then we found that different elements of the coat had different spiritual lessons and different things that they represented for Joseph. So having the multiple colors signified God's favor, and it kind of connected to the idea of like the rainbow being the covenant. The length of the garment was symbolic of divine protection, and the adornment was an anointing for greatness. So one thing that we found, and this is Hebrew. I don't speak Hebrew, so this is about to be probably a very bad mispronunciation, but it was Ketanet or Kethaneth Pasim was the original phrasing in Hebrew, and so that the Ketanet means garment. It was mentioned 7 times throughout Genesis, and it's kind of set apart from the other ways that clothing is spoken of. It was used again in Exodus to refer to priestly attire. And so it was this idea that only God's appointed people or anointed people could wear whatever garment that this specific word referred to. The pasim, pas means part, so pasim is plural. And since it means part, we assume that they meant multicolored. There's greater evidence that when that word was used for clothing, it meant a tunic that reached to the palms and to the soles of the feet. The Septuagint translated the Hebrew to the Greek poikilos, which Strong's lectionary indicates to mean multicolored. So because of this, the King James Version of the Bible says the coat of many colors. So that was just some context that we found that we thought was important. But in various translations of the Bible, it's said varicolored, ornate, tunic to the wrist, striped, and just several things that kind of represent this anointing and this like priesthood, or this symbol that maybe he would become something similar to a priest. So we thought all that was really interesting, and some things that we should include in the making of the coat. So the coat indicates one who takes on adversity and judgment, and there is a diversity that sets him apart from his brethren, but he does it for the benefit of his brethren. He does not take on this privilege himself, but he is appointed by the Father. So Joseph, his life is meant to prefigure the coming of Christ, according to several theologians. That this idea of being appointed for greatness, undergoing hardship, and kind of returning and finding this forgiveness when someone has wronged you. So that was ideas that we leaned into a lot. There's also, just in color theory, different things that the colors can represent. So for sure, we found that gold a lot of times was meant to represent this idea of like being forged in fire, and like your faith undergoing something that caused it to be forged. Additionally, in songs about the coat, they specifically say that it has golden lining. So we wanted to put a lot of gold on the coat. Blue was a color reserved for priest, and purple was a color that kind of really denoted someone as being above others, oftentimes in a royalty way, but it's because purple was the most expensive dye. So it's our idea that Joseph is the only one on stage in this really vibrant blue. We have some people in darker blue, but he's the only one in a really vibrant blue, and he's the only one in purple. So those were a lot of things that were really important to us to represent in the coat. And our set design delves into a lot of these ideas as well. And so I'm really excited about that too. This is a show, like we feel really strongly about this show and about its message. And in my opinion, the way the show is written, there's nothing that is sacrilegious or is trying to take away from the story. It's written in a way for children. Like, it reminds me of a Vacation Bible School kind of story. And so it was just really important to us to do all of the theological research and to engage with community partners and ask these questions so that we know that we are doing the most justice to the story that we can. So the coat is done. It's really odd to have this huge thing done several weeks before the show, but now there's so many other projects for us to work on. But the coat is really something special, and I hope that it reflects all of these ideas that we've put into it. We definitely went for a striped idea, added the gold through the godettes, added adornment through ribbons at all the seams. On the back of the coat, we have a star and some corn to represent those dreams that Joseph has that place him in this position of authority and in this position of kind of anointment. So
I'm excited for everyone
All
to
right,
see it.
so after rewatching through the video, I wanted to just explain some details of the coat that are more like the sewing side details in case it's of interest to anyone. Excuse the dog. So just because I misspoke a few times, every fabric on the coat was polyester charmeuse satin or polyester twill, aside from the multicolored fabric that was donated to us. And I'm not sure what type of fabric that was, but I do know when it cut, it really, really frayed, and it's a very thick fabric. We did end up removing the lining because we were unable to kind of stretch the coat around Joseph. Like we wanted the moment like in the movie when it fans out around him, and we're unable to do that with the lining because like I said earlier in the video, I didn't cut lining for the godettes. I think if I had, the lining would have worked out, but that was more than I had originally purchased fabric for. So it was better to just cut the lining out and let it be unlined. It does still have lining up to the waistline where it fans out. I also didn't add a back godette between the two multicolored panels for the same reason, so that the coat can kind of freely stretch a little more. All of the fabric was purchased from Fabric Wholesale Direct, which I found it really easy to work with them. And everything came in pretty quickly. I ordered it back in the fall as part of a big bulk order for our fall and spring shows. But all of the fabric was from Fabric Wholesale Direct, except the multicolored fabric because it was donated. All of the ribbon that I used on the coat for embellishment was from Hobby Lobby, except the black and gold ribbon, which was part of the fabric donation that we received. For the cuff and collar, I used extra firm interfacing, and I maybe would have used less firm because it's a little crinkly up close. I did find this pattern from Simplicity easy to follow, but I did not 100% follow the directions as it was written, particularly because I split the panels in half and I added the godettes. In the overall sewing of the coat, I mostly did French seams so that it could stop the fraying a little more. The shoulders are reinforced with shoulder pads. I just bought them from Hobby Lobby and hand sewed them in. The bib on the pattern was buttoned all the way around, but because this has to quickly go on the actor on stage, buttoning all around was not an option. And also, for being fully honest, I don't like doing buttonholes. So the bib is sewn onto one side and it snaps in two places on the other side, kind of up near the top and then right before it goes to a point at the bottom. I did add 2 buttons on either side, so it looks a little more decorative. But basically when it goes on the actor, it gets zipped up and then snapped over to the side. I solely use Singer sewing machines. I've picked my bed and I'm going to lay in it forever. So the Singer machines, I use Singer Heavy Duty 4432 when I'm at school, and my home machine is a Singer Heavy Duty 4452. The serger is Singer Heavy Duty HD 0400S. And I really do like that serger. I know when I was in college, we had an industrial serger. Not my jam, couldn't figure it out. The Singer one is color-coded, so it makes it easy to figure out how to thread, even if it frustrates me to no end and I'm sitting there with tweezers and a flashlight. I like to use the extension table accessory that Singer has as well, especially when wrangling a massive project like this, because the longer it went on with the coat, the harder it was to get it sewn because it was just so much material. As far as thread goes, I mostly use 100% polyester thread. On this particular project, I mostly used yellow and brown. On everything that you were going to see, like the ribbons, I used yellow. On other stuff, I rotated between yellow and brown just depending on the machine, because I have students sewing right now too, so we were kind of rotating machines around at school. And that was because I was doing those French seams. So I knew that the thread was not going to be seen on either side. And then on the decorative back panel, I actually got some embroidery thread. It was like thread, it wasn't quite as thin, like I've done cross stitching before. It wasn't like the thread that you would pull apart, but it was labeled embroidery thread. But it was metallic gold, and I used a really short length and a wide width, and kind of mimicked an embroidered applique for that back panel. And I used 80/12 needles for most of the project, but near the end, on the day that I broke 6 needles, and then the next day I broke like 3 more, I switched to 116 needles, and that was how I was able to finish the project. And then ultimately, when I hemmed it, I returned to the serger to hem the bottom. And anytime I did the serger, I just did black thread because that's what we have available. And, you know, I figured if people are looking at the hem of the coat instead of the rest of the coat, that I've done something wrong. So ultimately, I still consider myself like a beginner sewer. And I'm really not like ashamed to admit that. Like there's a lot of things that I look up throughout the process or watch videos because I want to get better at sewing. When I was in college, I took a costuming class, and we had been working on hand sewing, and then they were like, oh, after spring break, we'll switch to machines. And that was the year that COVID happened, and we never came back from spring break. So I am, you know, always trying to learn more about sewing machines. And I've just found that Singer is kind of the easiest for me to figure out how to work with and how to troubleshoot and problem solve. So, you know, that was just some information that I wanted to pass along because I know I like to watch sewing videos and I like to hear what other people are using. So I just figured I'd pass along some of those little details and correct some things that I said in the video, or, you know, just pass along some additional information about why I said I was thinking one thing, but then we did something else. So if you find yourselves in the area at the end of March, please come see Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat because I think it's going to be pretty amazing. Thanks for watching.